Deepti ma'am, shall we start, ma'am?
Yes, Dr. Vijay.
Thank you. Good evening, all. Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I may remember. Involve me and I learn. With this quote from Benjamin Franklin, I, Dr. M. Vijay Karthikeyan, National Treasurer of IAME, feel very much privileged to welcome all the participants, the panelists, and moderator for today's panel discussion organized as a monthly event from IAM. And today we have with us four eminent panelists who will be sharing their insights along with the moderator on the topic spatial memory and embodied learning, kinesthetic, game-based, and immersive techniques to enhance retention of complex anatomy. This will be the topic for today's panel discussion. So with no further ado, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Sangeeta Madam, who is the Professor and Head of Department of Anatomy from MBJ Medical College and Research Institute, Bangalore. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yeah, ma'am, you are.
Esteemed panelists, moderator, faculty members, and dear participants, it gives me great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to each one of you to this panel discussion on spatial memory and embodied learning, organized by the Interprofessional Academy of Medical Educators. Anatomy, as we all know, forms the cornerstone of medical education, a subject that demands not only cognitive understanding but also spatial awareness and tactile experience. With the rapid evolution of educational technologies, we now have the opportunity to explore new dimensions of learning that engage the body, the mind, and the senses through kinesthetic, game based, and immersive techniques that make complex anatomical relationships easier to visualize and retain. Today's panel brings together four distinguished professors of anatomy whose rich teaching experience and innovative approaches have redefined anatomy education. We are equally honored to have our moderator, Dr. Deepti Shastri Madam, Deputy Dean, Vinayaka Mission Kripananda Variyar Medical College, Salem, also an eminent anatomist who will steer this discussion and bring out valuable insights from diverse perspectives. On behalf of IAME, I extend a heartfelt welcome to our panelists, moderator, and all the participants. As we begin, let us remember that learning anatomy is not just about memorizing structures, it is about experiencing form, function, and connection. Today's discussion promises to illuminate how modern tools and embodied experiences can make this journey both deeper and more memorable. Once again, I welcome you all to this intellectually engaging session, and over to Deepti ma'am.
Thank you, Sangeeta ma'am, for your warm welcome address. Now it's a time to introduce the moderator for today's session. So I feel very much privileged to welcome our own eminent person in the field of medical education, Dr. Deepti Shastri ma'am. She has done her MBBS as well as MS Anatomy from one of the prestigious and oldest medical colleges in India, that is Goa Medical College. Ma'am is also the member of the National Academy of Medical Sciences and has completed ACME. Ma'am is currently the Dean, Faculty of Medicine, Vinayaka Missions Research Foundation, and also the Deputy Dean of Vinayaka Missions Kripananda Variyar Medical College and Hospital, Salem, Tamil Nadu. Ma'am has a rich experience of 27 years in teaching anatomy for both undergraduate as well as postgraduate students. To her credit, ma'am is the chairperson for the UG as well as PG Board of Studies, VMRFDU, as well as the member of Executive Council and Academic Council of VMRFDU. Ma'am is also the convener, curriculum committee of our institution, Vinayaka Mission Kripananda Variyar Medical College, and is the president of Academy of Dental Education. And she was a past president for Association of Anatomists in Tamil Nadu from 2019 to 2022. Ma'am is also the Board of Studies for Preclinical Medicine postgraduates in Goa University, as well as the former member PG Board of Studies, Kerala University and Health Sciences. And she is a resource faculty for Swayam Prabha, as well as the reviewer for medical recording in NPTEL, and is also the section editor in Journal of Anatomical Society of India. And she was a former editor-in-chief of NJBMS Journal and is the former secretary of Society for Basic Medical Sciences. And she is also the PhD supervisor for our Vinayaga Missions Research Foundation and is a guest speaker for more than 40 national as well as international workshops, conferences in anatomy and medical education. To her credit, she has nearly 50 publications in various reputed national as well as international journals, and she has organized over 30 conferences, workshops, CMEs, either at the institutional level, regional level, national as well as international level. And she was awarded with the Global Faculty Award in the year 2022 and Certificate of Recognition for Eminent Medical Teachers by the InvoCare E-Academy and MEU India in the year 2021. And she also holds the Best Scientific Concept Paper poster at National Bioethic Conference in 2017, organized by the Father Muller Institute. And also she is awarded with the prestigious Cooper Memorial Award for Teachers conferred in annual conference of anatomists. So with this kind introduction, I would like to hand over the floor to the most eminent moderator, Professor Dr. Deepthi Shastri ma'am, and kindly take over.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay Karthikeyan. You were very generous with your introduction as well. Good evening, everyone. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all our esteemed anatomists and educators joining us today. I would like to wish all of you a very happy, though belated, World Anatomy Day, which is celebrated in commemoration for the death anniversary of the father of modern anatomy, Andreas Vesalius. All of us know this day is celebrated on the 15th of October, but we chose to have a panel discussion in commemoration of World Anatomy Day, and to avoid the traffic jam of academics on 15th, we chose to conduct it on the 18th, and we are glad that many of you have joined the panel discussion today. Let's begin today's session with a pre-panel poll. And this is done just to gauge the pulse of the audience. Kindly post your responses on the chat box for this question. Which technique have you tried or seen in anatomy teaching? The four options are kinesthetic approaches, game-based learning, immersive techniques, integrated case scenarios. You could choose one option or multiple options. Please post on the chat box. So responses are integrated case scenarios, game-based learning and integrated scenarios, kinesthetic. Most faculty seem to have experienced integrated case scenarios and game-based learning. Some of you say immersive learning as well, but most of you looks like integrated scenarios. Praveen sir, of course, has experienced all four methods of teaching anatomy. Dr. Shantini says game-based. Muthukumar Well sir says integrated case scenarios. Thank you everyone for responding to this question. Now we move on to the panel discussion, and it's a privilege to open this panel on spatial memory and embodied learning, kinesthetic, game-based, and immersive techniques to improve or enhance retention of complex anatomy. Why this topic? As we all know, anatomy at its heart is a spatial science, understanding relationships, orientations, and movements within the human body. But traditional methods often rely heavily on rote memorization. Today's discussion explores how spatial memory and embodied learning through movement, play, and immersion can transform abstract concepts into lived experiences. It's my privilege to welcome our distinguished panel of anatomists, each one a passionate educator and innovator who are shaping the way anatomy is taught and learned today. Dr. Praveen B. Iyer, an achiever who is brimming with knowledge but is down to earth and ever so helpful. His educational qualifications are MD Anatomy from GSMC Mumbai, DNB Anatomy, International FAMER Institute Philadelphia, and GSMC FAMER Fellowship in Medical Education, FAMER Competency Based Education IFACE, International 3T Integrated Course in Bioethics. He is a recognized MD and PhD guide for anatomy in the Maharashtra University of Health Sciences and has a teaching experience of 19 years for UG and 14 years PG and 4 years for PhD. His present affiliations are he is an additional professor of anatomy at St. GS Medical College and KM Hospital, Mumbai. He has 14 paper publications and 2 book chapter publications and has more than 100 scientific presentations and guest lectures, 1 keynote address, and 1 oration. His awards, honors, and achievements are he is the co-director, GSMC FAMER Regional Institute. He is the convener of the NMC Nodal Center for Faculty Development, GSMC. He is a member board of examinations at MUHS. He's a member executive committee on faculty development, curriculum review committee of anatomy at the National Medical Commission. He is the ex-secretary of the regional chapter of anatomy and has been awarded the late Professor Dr. Jagdish Kalgutkar Memorial Award, University of Mumbai. His areas of interest are student assessment, program evaluation, neuroanatomy, clinical anatomy, and embryology. Dr. Sheila Shivan. She is a multitasker who wears many hats as an educator and administrator. Her skills include curriculum planning and development and academic administration and instructions, administrative leadership and program implementation, teachers training, staff management, training and mentoring students, classroom management, performance, and standard analysis. Her experience and responsibilities are she has 23 years of teaching experience. She is the vice principal of MES Medical College, Perinthal, Kerala. She is the professor and head of anatomy in the same institution, curriculum committee coordinator, MEU coordinator, and is a member of the postgraduate board of studies in Kerala University of Health Sciences. She's been a speaker in various CMEs and conferences and has organized state conference and various academic programs. She has published papers in international and national journals. Her education and training are she has completed her MBBS and MD anatomy from Government Medical College, Calicut, Kerala, ACME from the NMC Nodal Center, Kottayam, BCME from the NMC Regional Center, Calicut, NTTC JIPMA, and has completed BCBR. Dr. T.S.R. Anjana, she is a rising star in the field of anatomy. She is soft-spoken yet assertive in her opinions on anatomy education. She has 12 years of experience in teaching anatomy to UG and PG students and has introduced activity-based learning, an innovative teaching method, creating an immersive and fun learning experience for UG students. She has completed her advanced course in medical education in 2018 and was the MEU coordinator for 4.5 years at Government Umandurar Medical College. She is an MEU member in the current institution and is the co-coordinator of the Cadaveric Skills Lab. She has published 15 original articles in various national journals with a citation index of 31. She has been awarded research grants by the Tamil Nadu State Research Committee for 2 projects on effects of formaldehyde on various organs in Vista albino rats following inhalation. She has received the Dr. Abdul Rahim Best Oral Presentation Award at an international anatomy conference. She was the organizing secretary for various medical education workshops on manuscript writing, artificial intelligence, and qualitative research. She has served as an organizing secretary for MedEd Connect 24, a national level medical education conference organized under the aegis of the Director of Medical Education and Research, Tamil Nadu. Dr. Doris George Johanan is a dedicated academician known for his learner centric approach and excellence in anatomy teaching. He is a lecturer in anatomy at the University of Exeter Medical School, UK, has a teaching experience in India and UK of 15 years, has 21 peer reviewed publications and 6 book chapters, 212 citations with a H index of 8. He is a reviewer for anatomical sciences education, BMC medical education, and surgical and radiologic anatomy. The awards he has received are Anatomy and Physiology category award winner at Osmosis Raise the Line International Faculty Awards 2022. His research on use of hand gestures, air anatomy, was featured on the cover of Anatomical Sciences Education, which has an impact factor of 6.652. His article, Air Anatomy, was awarded the top 10 most cited articles in ASC from Jan 22 to December 2023. He was invited by the Medical Scientists Exchange Program of the National Academy of Medical Sciences India to get training on tractography for visualizing white matter neuroanatomy in September 2022. He has received the American Association of Anatomy Innovation Grant from the Global Neuroanatomy Network Innovation Team. He was featured in American Association of Anatomists Faces of Anatomy. He has been a recipient twice of International Travel Support Grant Award by the Science and Engineering Research Board, SERB, Government of India, to present at the 10th Asia Pacific International Conference of Anatomists at the University of Otago, Dunedin, New Zealand in 2023, and to attend the 19th annual course Neuroradiology and Functional Neuroanatomy, University College London, UK in 2019. He has received the Dr. K.R. Pandalai Memorial Award for Best Paper Presentation, Faculty Category, May 2023, ASI Kerala State Conference. Together, the panelists represent the perfect blend of experience, creativity, and vision. And we look forward to an enriching discussion ahead. I'll stop sharing my slides now. And I invite our first panelist, Dr. Doris George Johanan, who, as we all know, has put air anatomy on the top of the charts. We invite him to share his perspectives on kinesthetic approaches to learning and teaching anatomy. The screen is all yours, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Let me just share my screen. Just give me a minute. Is my screen visible? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction, Dr. Deepthi ma'am, and good afternoon to, good afternoon to all the expert panelists and the amazing anatomists attending this conference. So thank you so much for this introduction. The topic I'm planning for my presentation today is the role of movement, which encompasses what is called as kinesthetic importance of kinesthetic activities as an anatomy educator. As Deepthi ma'am rightly mentioned initially, we were actually trained anatomy in a very traditional manner. The out of the box thinking was quite less when probably when we were trained or when we were starting teaching. But the different methods of how anatomy is learned, which probably Dr. Praveena sir will mention about how anatomy is actually spatial, anatomy is actually three-dimensional. And if that point is missed, then we actually fail to teach anatomy properly for the global what we are training in NMC. The goal of an NMC Indian medical graduate is to be of global standards. So if we are just teaching only to memorize things or rote learning, then that is actually a failure as an anatomy educator. So this basic idea is to impart spatial understanding, as this conference is showing different methods of imparting spatial understanding, and my role is on movement. So this is one of the one of the sentences which I read when I was doing MD anatomy, and it's kind of a guiding sentence for me, which changed my understanding of how anatomy is learned. It's a sentence in Hollenschmidt textbook of anatomy. It's not a I don't think the current editions are there out, but if you read the first preface of Hollenschmidt, it's a wonderful textbook. It says that anatomy is a visual science. It is essential for the student to engage the mind's eye, and time spent on repeated reading of the text will be less effective than visualizing a structure and its relations to parts or regions. I think this is a very underrated sentence that I remember a couple of my there was a trend to make people read anatomy a lot, and write them a lot and thus memorize. But that may not be the tone of what Hollenschmidt is telling in this sentence. That he's imparting the importance of mentally visualizing. Somehow a student has to mentally visualize repeatedly to actually get the grasp of anatomy, to make anatomy applicable when they are in clinical practice, whatever specialty they are in. If there has to be meaning for that, then there has to come there has to be a mental visual involvement for the student. So this is just Diviti ma'am has actually told me to demonstrate air anatomy. So I just want to give an intro of what air anatomy is. It's kind of it was actually crowdsourced. I got this motivation of thinking about how gestures can be used to teach anatomy from student feedback. It's actually student feedback which guided me. So when I did some preliminary research on how to explore it, this is an article that I found. It is in 2017 Medical Teacher. It's 12 tips of how effective body languages can be used by medical educators. And this is a very interesting rule. It's 7-38-55 rule. It says that during human communication, 7% is by words, 38% is by the tone of our language, and 55%, that's a whopping 55%, is actually by body language. So more than half of what we actually teach is actually generated from our body language. It need not be gestures. It may even be our stance, may even be our gaze. So a lot of our body language has a role in how an educator can do an effective teaching. So that is the point of it's a very it's 1971. It's actually a prose written not on medical education or anatomy or anything. It's actually social sciences, but it is telling how important it is body language in our human communication. So these are the articles that I have basically published. So if any of these of the audience is interested in knowing what like what are my works on gestures, then they can refer on to this. Two of them are in anatomical science education, and one is a book chapter in biomedical visualization. There's a teamwork, not only me, it's actually teamwork. So my last slide is thanking that team, which actually helped me to generate this. So I want to just demonstrate how I use gestures. This is actually, we did a deliberate activity of introducing gestures into teaching. So I'm showing. I hope my screen is visible. My entire screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
All right, good. So here this is right away from my article itself. So this is just illustrating how a two-dimensional understanding of heart anatomy, cardiac chamber anatomy, I bring it onto three-dimensional space. So what I did is basically what you're seeing here is I'm using my right hand and my left hand to create what is called the Valentine heart. And we all know, as anatomy teachers, we know that this is not the orientation of the heart. The orientation of heart is in such a way that the right ventricle is anterior, the left atrium is the base, it is posterior, the right atrium is forming the right border, and the left ventricle is forming the apex. So it's quite difficult for the student to understand what this, and understanding that is quite important to understand how an anterior wall MI is affecting, how how an LAD is affecting the anterior wall, or how a transesophageal echo is visualizing from the left atrium. So all this spatial understanding is visualizable only if you bring it into 3 dimension. But the focus of many of our teaching methods are not that much emphasizing onto bringing spatial understanding. So that is when I brought this idea of using gestures to bring about how heart is oriented. So what I'm doing here in B images, I'm using these two hands I have transposed to create right atrium here and the right ventricle in front. And this will be the left ventricle and this will be the left atrium. So I bring the heart like an illusion, like a holographic model right in front of me using just my hands. So the implications of this is that I'm not using any technology. It's highly accessible. You can use anywhere in your in a small group, in a dissection table, or in a demonstration. The implications are so much. This is how I teach about thalamus. I'm teaching thalamus like an egg. This is the midline. This is the right thalamus, the rounded end and the pointed end. I'm bringing them all in the space in front of me, and a small group in front of me is going to get a spatial understanding right by my interactions. And I usually bring students onto this picture. Like if I'm doing here in heart anatomy, I ask students to point out the left atrium. I ask them to touch the right ventricle. So they are involved in the space. So this is highly effective in a small group. So that was how I did. Now this is how I'm showing the axilla. If you can see my screen as well, I can use my right hand to show this is my right thoracic wall. I can say that this is the humerus. I can bring as you can see, the screen is in front. So you can see my left hand is now anterior, and now my left hand is going posterior. I can bring anterior, posterior, medial, lateral, everything just using my hand gestures. It's a highly accessible. The point here is that I'm not using any technology. I'm using involvement, I'm using engagement, and I'm asking students also to engage. So the focus of my paper, my initial experiment was, is this actually effective, or is it just an anecdote? Is it just my thought? Is it just my feeling? Or is it actually, can I prove it out? So I did an experiment, just like we did any experiments. I did an experiment. This is actually the orbit and the eyeball, and I'm bringing the eyeball movements. This is the elevation, depression, intorsion, extorsion, the adduction, abduction. I use this to teach the extraocular muscles and extraocular movement. It's a highly spatially complex topic. And what I did was I did an examination. I measured cognitive loads, which is quite important to how spatial thinking is occurring. I hope Pravina sir will mention about cognitive loads. And I checked student ratings, and this is actually the table. This was the evidence that I could generate about how important gestures is. I did an intervention group and a control group, and you can see the p values on this side, and you can see the increase of score over here. This is 76.2 in a basic recall for the control group, and it's 91.2 in the interventions group. So there was an evident change which I could measure using a very well designed randomized control education trial. So the gestures, this is just a kinesthetic movement, and I emphasize the role of a teacher here, but I also suggest students to be involved in this. Students using gesture is a different point, which I wish to explore more. But that is again a different topic as such. But I'm imparting here the role of an educator, as an anatomy educator, and how to use gestures to and kinesthetic movements to teach spatial anatomy in a very good way. So these are the advantages which I feel a very good implication in visual spatial memory, motor memory. It is a primary knowledge. Gestures is actually a primary knowledge. We don't need much training to use gestures. If you ask about an egg, everyone can show an egg like that. So there is no much training involved. Better cognitive loads, room for a lot of interactivity, enlivening the topic is possible, and obviously an economic advantage. It is a zero cost topic. So I just want to thank this team of mine. We've worked for many years. It's a bunch of students, postgraduates, and Dr. Ashwati is one of my colleagues. We actually generated this, developed this idea. It was unconventional. We got a lot of ridicule actually, but later on we could actually prove that this was having a real good advantage. And I would also like to thank the Department of Anatomy, Trivandrum Medical College, my alma mater, which enabled me to conduct this work and bring about the importance of gesture, such a simple technique on and using this kinesthetics to teach spatial understanding to students. I also thank all my students who motivated me to explore on this topic. Yeah, that is my presentation. I conclude. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, you're mute.
Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Doris George, for that beautiful way you have demonstrated with hand gestures how movement and modeling can make anatomy a living experience rather than a static content. I think the only content that I have delivered with hand gestures is rotation of midgut. I do try, but I'm not very good at hand gestures. I guess everyone has their own experiences. Thank you once again, Dr. Doris. Now let's move on from movement to play, exploring how games can spark engagement and reinforce learning. I invite Dr. TSR Anjana to share her thoughts on game-based learning in anatomy and how interactive challenges can transform classroom dynamics. Over to you, Dr. Anjana.
Good evening, ma'am, and good evening, everyone. And thank you, madam, for the warm introduction. Before I begin, I would like to thank the organizing team for giving us this wonderful opportunity on a very different and unique concept. So, as anatomists, I would say that every one of us here, as we have navigated through this landscape of teaching anatomy to the different generation of students, I'm sure every one of you would agree that we as teachers have evolved over the concepts of imparting anatomy knowledge. So that is how this concept of gameplay came to foreplay for me. So initially, around 10 years ago, in the year 2015, predominantly it was based on the models that we used, like how Sir Doris sir was explaining about gestures. We were using models, clay models, or even using cloth materials, any kind of material that is pliable. We were using that cottons inside the cloth and making it a shape of an organ. And as years went by, I was trying to go, in the meantime, I had completed my advanced course in medical education where we learned about the types of learners as well. So once we employed that VARC questionnaire, wherein we found out that the majority of students in our setup belong to the category of visual learners. So in the meantime, I was going through various articles about visual learning, and I came across a concept called dual coding theory, ma'am. So dual coding theory is combining verbal and visual information that enhances both learning and also retention of memory because they are processing information to two distinct channels. So the retrieval of information is through two channels wherein the brain helps the students to retrieve information from both the learning materials. It not just improved learning outcomes by leveraging both cognitive pathways, but it also improved student engagement, which was the need of the hour. And as years went by, we employed other methods, and I started providing the same model-based learning that did not have the same impact as it had 10 years ago. So in the process of evolving the methods of teaching, I landed up in the concept of activity-based learning. It is the basis for offline gamification. That happened around 3 years ago, in the year of 2022, which was a resounding success, and we had positive feedbacks from the student side. Currently, from last year, there is again a change in the way, the pattern, that is the Gen Zs, we say, and now 2025, we are going to deal with generation theta, that they say. So alpha. So from offline gamification, we now moved on to online gamification methods where we can simultaneously engage them at their own pace. This generation, the main requisite is you don't instruct me on what to do and when to do. I'll do it at my own pace. So in order to cater to those population, there is a big roadmap, ma'am, on how we actually ended up in this method of a method which I'll be trying to explain now. We did a needs assessment. That needs assessment is to identify the gaps wherein the students are trying hard to focus. So the area where we thought they are lacking in was learning surface marking. But as an anatomist, I believe that forms the basis for clinical training. To learn anatomy is to find the landmark and to identify the structure through clinical examination before you employ a radiological or another investigative modality. So with that needs assessment, we set an objective and we framed specific learning objectives, and we tried the structured method of surface marking. That was not working. So how are we going to employ teaching surface marking to this generation who wants to study at their own pace? And then came the birth of this app called Educa Play. Educa Play is, it has free access to all of us. And in Educa Play, we have various modalities like quizzes or crossword puzzle. And in that, there is a concept called maps. Vijay Karthikeyan, sir, if possible, can you just share us the homepage of the Educa Play app?
Sure, ma'am. Sure.
Yeah. And this is the homepage where is the Educa Play Maps has a map quiz maker, which has free access, and this is the outline. You can log in or you can directly have access to it. And in the map quiz maker, you can make your own game where it is present below. You can make your own game. Sir, can you move to the next slide? Wherein you can add the images that are required for your session. I'm just trying to explain the basic methods, basic concept of this application, because the complete demonstration of the app, it requires a separate session on its own, ma'am. It has intricate nuances, but I'll just outline the brief outline of the demonstration. So next slide, sir. So this is just an example of how we can incorporate the image of interest. For example, for instance, you're planning to teach the surface marking of lower limb, the region. You've completed the lower limb region and you want to teach the surface marking. You can just employ this basic image, identify the points where you want the students to mark the bony landmarks in the human body. So as I was explaining earlier, this dual coding theory, it's going to combine visual resources along with the learning at their own pace. And this one, it helps this. In this, you can just play, or if you want, you can, next slide, sir. Or you can just explore and play where it is not just identification of the point. You can ask the student to name what the point is, describe what the point is. So the previous ones, describe. And if you want him to describe it, you can include it in the written answer. And since it is in the form of gameplay, you can set the maximum number of errors where after each mistake, one life will be lost. So if he's making a mistake in identifying that point, one life will be lost. So you can set the number of errors, 5 mistakes in that area of identification, he'll lose the lives. He'll have to start from the beginning. So you can set a maximum time also to finish the game. And you can shuffle the orders between students. And that way, they cannot just sit and interact with each other. And as any game, this also has the facility of leaderboards. Automatically, after the time is over, the leaderboard will display the scores of the individuals. And we have seen students fight for the top 5 positions where we announce the name of winners for the top 5 spots. So the visual learners have actually benefited from the diagrams, and we made them try to extrapolate this data on the cadavers at a later date. So this can happen at home. It was actually given as a homework. You're supposed to complete this assignment. Only then you'll be permitted to attend tomorrow's session on the surface marking. It's like a reward mechanism. So everyone completed, they wanted to know their score. And they came into the dissection hall and they wanted to prove otherwise, when even though my scores are less, it has shown me that I'm deficient in this area. I'm going to try and learn this now, and I'm going to prove myself in my table teaching to my table tutor. So when the person was a topper, those students were confident enough to come and face us. When they have lost their lives and when they are not on the top 5 of the leaderboard, they tried hard to come and prove themselves in the table teaching. So either way, it was beneficial for both the students and the teachers. And the outcome, see, we were trying to, whatever the methods we use, we tried to measure the outcome as well. When we analyzed the correlation between the learning objectives and the actual outcomes, it was highly positive. So I recommend this app, and I recommend all the faculties to go through this app. It is a basic app where we can learn on our own. It's like using our cell phone. You can just go through the labelings, and we can add in the points. It's very easy, and you can refine it. You can upgrade it based on the reviews and the outcomes in your setup with your students. How best you can apply, it's up to the creativity of the student. And the entire student cohort can be assessed in a very short time span. That is also another advantage of this method. So that's what I would like to conclude about this EducaPlay map quiz.
Thank you, Dr. Anjana. You took me back to those days of paper models where we used to make these folds of dura matter
Yes.
and inguinal canal. I still remember the final year students coming and learning inguinal canal with those paper models, and also clay models where we would make larynx and middle
Yes.
ear and so on. And we have evolved during COVID times where surface marking and anatomy, how do we teach the students who are at their homes? So actually we got them to do live surface anatomy,
Anatomy.
where
Okay.
they would request their family members to be the
Remembers too.
subjects. Yeah, and they would video record surface anatomy, like feeling pulse, radial pulse, or doing this biceps tendon palpation, or palpating abdominal organs, and so on. So that's how we had evolved. And now, of course, game based. Thank you so much for that lively exploration of game based learning. You have shown how play can power cognition as well as motivation. You said,
Yes.
like they were motivated to come back and learn in the department as well. So thank you so much for sharing your experience, Dr. Anjana. Now let's
Okay.
move on deeper into the learner's experience itself. I would like to invite Dr. Sheila Shivan to share her insights on immersive techniques for learning anatomy, methods that would draw the students into the subject through engagement. Though games also engage the students, let's look at what Dr. Sheila Shivan has to offer to us regarding student engagement and especially sensory participation. Over to you, Dr. Sheila.
Thank you, Deepti ma'am. Thank you for the great introduction. And thank you for the opportunity to speak here among the august audience. And so my topic is again engagement and immersion into the learning of anatomy. And as we all know, the introduction with Vijay Karthikeyan gave, those words were based on the Dale scones of learning. That is, we say that you read, you retain only 5%, you see 10. In that way, we say that almost 70% is the learning happens when there is hands-on experience, and 90% is when you do, that is a simulated or a real experience when you get. So based on that, when we talk about the immersive learning technology, the technology has advanced, and it has almost, this immersive learning technology has almost become the cornerstone of medical training nowadays. It is almost not only in anatomy, in all the other, especially the surgical fields and all, they are using this technology into this. And of course, I would like to say that even it is rare here in India. Even I don't have any hands-on experience on that immersive technology. So what is immersive learning that is in education? That is a method that is actually deeply engaging. That is, you're taking the student into something called as a virtual or a simulated environment, and you are just immersing them into that environment and virtual reality. So the virtual reality and augmented reality comes into play in this immersive technology of learning process which happens. So this method, what happens is that it builds and much more better understanding of the spatial relations. That is, which is very important as we discussed till now. That is, we know that the orientation. I always tell my students that please don't learn through the sentences given in your textbook. Please don't read through the sentences. Try to get an orientation of that organ or whatever structure you are learning. Because we know that that is the basic understanding which should happen in learning anatomy. And I have heard even many doctors they themselves, they say that anatomy, that is something to be by hearted. And I always tell them that it is not by hearting, it is not. Please don't say like that. It is not. There is much more of understanding which happens in anatomy, and that is what is needed. You just can't by heart and reproduce so much of anatomy. And that is very difficult because we always hear students telling that I am putting all my hard work, I'm learning from, I'm sleepless nights, but I'm not able to recollect. That is usually what we hear regularly from the students also. So this immersive technology always might help the students to understand, make the understanding better, and improve the knowledge acquisition as well as the knowledge retention also, because that gives them more of engagements, and it improves more of participation, interaction, and it also eliminates distractions. So What is this immersion technology? Let us see that. That is, one is the virtual reality, which we call, and there is immersive virtual reality techniques that is involved. That is, this gives a 3D environment for the students for understanding the structures. It is a 3D environment rather than the textbooks or the atlases, which gives only a 2D pictures for them. So it is in virtual reality, the students, they use a head mounted display, and they are actually immersed into that environment, virtual environment, where they can use their either their hands, or there are joysticks which they can use to manipulate, and they can understand the parts of the body, as well as even they can go and take out a single structure and learn the in depth the parts relations of that structure. That means they can actually disassemble the whole body and then again reassemble it also, which is something which we can't do in a cadaveric dissection, which when we do. That is, so this type of learning can happen when there is a virtual reality, which will give, and it is actually a strong sense of presence there, as if they are into it. So they understand the intricate spatial relationships in the anatomy what we teach. So they are that is actually speaking, the virtual anatomy, or the virtual reality is major key concepts of virtual reality is immersion into it and the sense of presence in that. That is the basis of virtual reality. Whereas when we come to augmented reality, that is something like an overlay. It is an overlay technology. So that overlay technology, that is a you're overlaying the what you call the digital information onto the real self. That is, you have got an app on your tablet or an iPhone, and you can overlay that on your atlas or something and get the 3D picture into that with the augmented reality, so that you get the 3D model. If it is a picture of a heart, like what Dr. Doris was telling, that understanding the 3D, that is the orientation. What Dr. Doris said, every time, even when I start teaching a heart, I tell them that it is not that four chambers like a square you write and you draw. The orientation is different. So such things they get it through by the use of a mobile app, or you call a tablet or something. You overlay on that. So I think I can demonstrate that with the help of a video. I'll share a video and show two videos. One is related to the virtual reality, and the other one is the augmented reality. And there is mixed reality also. Together, we call it as the extended reality. Is it visible?
It's visible, ma'am. Is there sound?
Yeah. This is augmented reality.
Ma'am, do you want sound to be played?
Is it playing?
Uh, Dr. Vijay Karthikeyan, since you're the host,
Yes, ma'am.
can you check?
Ma'am has to share with audio, ma'am.
When you're sharing, ma'am, on
sharing at the right, there will be a display where it will show with volume also. We can share the audio also.
Dr. Sheila ma'am, can you
Yes,
unshare your screen, then reshare?
okay.
While you reshare, no, there will be an option called enabling computer sounds. So if you click
Okay.
mark that enable computer sound, it will come.
Is sound important, or you could?
No, it is not
drop it?
important. It is
Then
okay.
it's fine, ma'am. It's fine then.
This is what they are telling is remove lung. So they are removing the lung. So large intestine, remove it. That means you can minus out all the organs, and so they are removing the stomach there. This is what I said, that the veins are removed. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is the overlay technique in augmented reality. So now the bones have been added onto that. So this is just to show how the augmented reality, that is in a so this is virtual reality. So these are the head mounted display, and they are using the hand motions, or sometimes it might be the joysticks also. So this is what, whichever part you want to learn, you are immersed into that and you are seeing the structures. You are removing the skin, you are removing the muscles, you are taking the bone alone. So you are highlighting, you can see that they are involved into that. They are using their hands with the motions. That is actually, that is the haptic technology, you call it. That is, you get a certain feel, some vibrations or the touch by which you act with this. So I hope it was clear. The video was clear.
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Okay, so these are the two technologies in immersive learning, that is mainly the virtual reality and the augmented reality. And I hope everyone has understood the difference between those two. And when we talk about the advantages of this or the benefits of augmented, or the immersive technology, the major thing is the immersive technique, which enhances the knowledge acquisition as well as knowledge retention. That is the major thing, because when you are involved into it, you get motivated also in learning when the understanding is better and you are engaged into the process. Another thing is that the accessibility towards certain structures, which sometimes we know that even in cadaver dissection, certain things it's not accessible. So, certain areas it is accessible through this. And the most important thing what I felt is that the student can learn in his or her own pace, and it can be repeatedly done also, which is not possible with the cadaver dissection, because once you do the dissection, that is over. You want to go back and do it again, that is difficult. So this repeated learning can happen, and repeated training is possible with such technology which is there, that is the immersive learning technology. And it is also that there is enhanced acquisition of the skill also, that is in a virtual what even studies say that is that when you are in a virtual environment, you are learning something which is almost correlating with the real environment. And then when you are asked to do it in the real environment, the people who have been trained once in the virtual environment are able to do it a little more better or in a faster pace than those who are not exposed to that. So these are the advantages of the virtual reality and immersive learning. So that is about the immersive learning when compared to even traditional methods, or majorly there are studies which has happened, many studies are there, and majorly the comparison is between the actually the textbook learning, the regular traditional learning, the atlases which we use, and compared to this immersive learning technology. So that
Thank you,
comprises of
ma'am.
that.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. You have a lot of questions. We'll come to the question and answer session later. A request to participants as well. We'll finish the panel discussion and then come back to the question and answer session. I just want to take a point from Dr. Praveen Iyer, what he has posted on the chat box, that dissection is also immersive learning. But as Sheila ma'am just mentioned, technology, when you use it, you can use it at your own pace, at your own time. And I honestly believe during dissection, every student does not get an opportunity or chooses not to. He prefers to stand at the back and just observe. Many of them are shy or not confident, so they don't get engaged, they just observe. But this kind of immersive technology makes them enter personally into an anatomical world, and that leads to deeper engagement, as you just mentioned, ma'am, and probably it converts anatomical understanding into a long lasting memory. That's what I assume. So to connect all these experiences that all of you erudite panelists have just talked about, let's see how all these experiences can be connected to the science behind learning. So I now invite Dr. Praveen B. Iyer to share his perspective on the cognitive neuroscience link, which would explore how spatial memory and embodied learning can shape the way our brains construct anatomical knowledge. Over to you, sir.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. I think with the examples that have been shared by the previous three panelists, my job is pretty simple. I just have to summarize and just add something which is a little bit of theory and science behind it. So let me share my screen to just highlight keywords in the presentation. So the first term that we are using, today's term, is spatial memory. And as we all know, anatomy is three-dimensional. So with respect to anatomy, we are looking at how we can, how the students learn anatomy in a three-dimensional way and how our brain perceives that. So to define what spatial memory is, it is the brain's ability to encode, store, and recall information about the spatial relationships amongst the objects and environment. So that's what spatial memory means. And this is supported by the various structures inside the brain that contribute uniquely to spatial awareness, navigation, and orientation. So let me explain with the help of one diagram which parts of the brain do all these things. We are all familiar with the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere, and we are all familiar with the fact that the edge of the hemisphere is where the organs of the limbic system lie. So if we look at this particular region, that is the hippocampal formation. So hippocampus formation actually is responsible for construction of the scene. So there are certain cells in the hippocampal formation called as place cells. They are responsible for this particular event. Then just adjacent to it, where the uncus is, there is an entorhinal cortex. So the entorhinal cortex, there are certain cells called as grid cells, and they map the environment through the periodic spatial firing system. So that means when a learner is actually visualizing something, it goes into the memory, hippocampal formation creates that scene, and then the entorhinal area takes and correlates the thing. Then the third area is that of the parietal cortex, where the information that is there, what happens with our body when we actually get immersed into that kind of 3D learning, that is the role where parietal cortex plays. So this is called as egocentric framework, that is the function of the parietal cortex, whereas hippocampus is responsible for allocentric framework, that is to deal with the environment. Then there is this area behind the splenium of the corpus callosum that's called as the retrosplenial cortex. And this is where it acts as a bridge between the egocentric framework in the parietal cortex, which is what our body does, and that connects with the environment, what is happening in the environment of learning. So this area actually is a bridge between the egocentric and the allocentric framework. Then subsequently what happens is the prefrontal cortex, which is present here, that is responsible for execution and scene manipulation. That means once we have analyzed, once our brain has analyzed the learning that has happened when we are learning anatomy, for example, further thinking, analyzing further about what we have learned, that is a function of the prefrontal cortex. And finally, there is an area just around the rhinal sulcus, and that is responsible for object-based information. Now, if we look at all this and put into perspective, there are a few examples quoted in literature. Like, for example, the example is of London taxi driver. It could be a taxi driver in any city of the world. What happens is that a taxi driver, the moment repeatedly, as he gains experience of driving through that complex map of the city, what happens is all these systems which are there in place within the limbic system of the body, they come into picture, and then over a period of time, it becomes very simple for the taxi drivers to navigate through the various areas of the city because that map has become imprinted in the brain. The second example that is quoted in literature is about a Morris water maze, where this experiment has been performed on rodents, where a rodent is put in opaque water, and then in this opaque water, the rodent is asked to find out a tunnel that is built in that opaque water. So this also activates the same scheme of systems, the limbic system, and that is responsible for spatial memory. The second term that we have used today is embodied learning, where we have immersed, the learner is immersed while learning the subject. What it means is that learning is not purely mental process, but fundamentally involves the body's physical and sensory experiences. So we perceive and then our body reacts with responses. So it is an interaction between the sensory and the motor systems of the body that will help improve the retention of complex structures and functions. So embodied learning has got various components. One is, of course, the integration between the sensory cortex and the motor cortex. Then what we learn, we say now the eyes cannot see what the mind does not know. So therefore, cognition is very much required for action to visualize structures. So that's the second concept in embodied learning. And then the examples that we looked at, like see air anatomy using gestures, then we looked at game-based learning, and then we looked at the virtual reality and augmented reality. All are trying to use some kind of simulation where the learner is getting involved in the action. So when the learner gets involved, that is actually the embodied simulation that we're talking about. And all this leads to a conceptual grounding in the learner so that further retention takes place. There are various low technology methods and high technology methods. We have seen examples of them in the previous presentations. So interactive gesturing we saw as an example. Then body-based models, drawing and tracing. In fact, the traditional method also is a part of embodied learning. That's a low technology method. We ask students to complete diagrams in journal. What is it for? It is for learning only. But unfortunately, students don't believe that way. So therefore, now new technology is available. Hands-on dissection also is an example like that. But since again, the number of students is more and the resources are less for dissection, again, that is sort of a failure because everybody doesn't do it. So therefore, there are high-tech and immersive approaches. We saw examples of VR and AR. And the touch is what gives them feedback in VR and AR. And there are 3D interactive tools that are available, and a compound thing of virtual and augmented reality is mixed reality or extended reality learning. What are the benefits of this embodied learning is, uh, studies have suggested that that leads to deeper comprehension because the learners get involved. And because there is deeper comprehension, there is a chance that there will be improved retention. And because they are doing it hands-on, there is skill transfer, and therefore it leads to inclusivity. So these are all the benefits of embodied learning. So all in all, what I would like to say is there is our nervous system that is responsible for getting involved in all these kinds of learning, which are using spatial memory as well as embodied learning. With this, I stop my presentation, madam.
Thank you for enlightening us with the science behind memory, sir, especially the limbic system, role of limbic system and parietal lobe, which generally we use cine medication. In fact, to teach the students, I remember we use Gajini, the
Yes.
movie Gajini, and Memento, a movie, Finding Nemo, Still Alice. All these movies actually depict how memory is a part of the nervous system. Though they may be slight inaccurate depiction in movies, Still Alice is a wonderful movie where the medical knowledge is very well depicted in the movie, sir. The one point on the drawing that you mentioned, yes, because the students feel that it's trust upon them, they are non-cooperative. Here, I would like to thank Dr. Anjana. She conducted recently a competition, a photography and videography competition on anatomical concepts. I've never seen our students more interested in learning anatomy. I remember, in fact, one of our PGs got a prize for
Yes, sir.
urinary bladder. I don't think he's completed his record. Yeah, I don't think he's completed his record. Okay, but he did do this urinary bladder, and I was pretty impressed with how he was involved in learning anatomy through photography and videography. So thank you so much, all of you, for giving your thoughts. Now let's open the floor for discussion on a moderated discussion. I'll begin with questions to all of you panelists. How does spatial memory specifically enhance retention in anatomy compared to rote learning? What do you feel? Of course, Praveen sir has just told us about the neuroanatomy connection to uh, spatial memory, but what is your view, all of your view on retention of anatomy compared to rote learning? Anyone would like to take the question?
Yeah, compared to rote learning, I can say actually they are not engaging themselves into their learning process. That is the main issue. They don't engage. Like what you said, actually the immersive method, even model making is an immersive method, which I feel that where I have tried that also, especially larynx, which is a very difficult topic for them to understand. I had actually given, I think the 2 years back, I gave the students to make the model and show. That is, they had to make the model of larynx and show in the dissection hall. So they were all involved into that. So they were coming and asking. So that engagement, when that happened into that, the understanding was better. When they understood how they have to make the model, they need to know the structure of that. So they were engaged into it. Otherwise, what happens is that something like we say that whatever it goes from this year to the other year, this just passes on, or it passes above your head, it just goes there. And most of the students, I feel many of them have got an attitude that they have to learn just to pass the exam. That is another issue which we see, that at the end of the year you learn something, you by heart something. So it is the engagement which is not happening. That is the we what I said, that the Dale's cone of experience, that is learning. When only when you involve into the process, and I always make them also, tell them also, you teach others so that your learning becomes better. When you, if you want to teach others, you have to know better. You have to know that you have to have a better understanding of that subject. So in rote learning, what I understand is that the understanding part is not happening. It is just an exam-oriented learning which they do just to get their marks and just pass the exam. That is what I feel.
Thank you for your perspective on that, ma'am. As you mentioned, rote learning generally is meant for passing an exam, but review of literature indicates that spatial memory, in fact, helps them in the clinical aspects, where clinical reasoning. So, spatial memory and embodied learning helps them in radiological anatomy and surgical anatomy much better. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else would like to take the question? Or sir, Praveen Iyer, sir.
As I always say, and that is a fact also, anatomy is more of a cognitive learning subject. What we try to do is we try to engage the learners in such a way that their cognition of anatomy improves. And at the same time, the application of what they are learning in anatomy improves. So the whole effort that we make right now is for that particular purpose. With the advancement in technology, things are made available to the learners so that they can repeatedly learn at their own pace in their own closed environment also. That is available. The institute also can make these technologies available to the learners. Like skill lab is made mandatory in all colleges for the competency based education. So within the skill lab, there is an opportunity to get all these advanced technological features made available. Even though there are questions in the chat which says that number of students are more in a college, etc., I think it is just to take by turns. These opportunities may be given to the students, and of course, the time limit which is made for the college working hours, etc., that may be like made like a library where there is a 24-hour facility. So that way, if we make these facilities available to learners, then that is going to definitely help the students utilize all these services available. The next thing that I want to say is a very recent example. The new batch of students has joined, and the joy in the faces of the students when they actually touch a bone, the 3D features that they feel. Okay, I can really feel the ridge on this bone. So that feel also is a very important thing. So that is where spatial anatomy and spatial memory and embodied learning actually comes into picture. So it goes a long way in retention for the students because they actually visualize things.
Ma'am, I would also
Yeah.
like to add that when we compare the dissection as such, the cadaver dissection with this immersive technology, whatever we call the virtual reality, or what is lacking in the technology is that the tactile sensation is missing. What we say when we feel like what Sir said, the feel of the bone or the feel of the structure, that is always lacking in whatever we call the technology, virtual reality or augmented reality. So that is actually a drawback. And there are studies which have shown a comparison of an open book with a virtual reality. So in that, the response, when the post test was given, the response time when we compare to the open books, it was much better in a virtual reality. But in another study where they compared the virtual reality with cadaver and an atlas group, it was a 3 groups. One was with atlas, one was with the cadaver, and the other was with the what you call virtual reality. In that, actually, they said that it is found that the cadaver and the virtual reality, the post-test scores were almost the same. No much difference. But in Atlas, it was a little bit less. But the students' feedback was very positive regarding the virtual reality. They took a feedback. So that is there. That is the difference which they found.
Ma'am, may
Yes,
I
ma'am.
add? Ma'am,
Yes, ma'am.
what we have noticed is, as I've already mentioned, there is a reduction in the cognitive load, and basically there is a redistribution of the cognitive processes across both visual and verbal channels. So it helps students, makes it easier for them to encode the complex anatomical relationships when it is spatial memory is combined with the routine didactic lecture. Then the rote learning is linear, it is verbal heavy approach. Whereas here, there's a redistribution with visual and verbal memory. And as you rightly pointed it out, the increased engagement and motivation of the students that naturally enables them to uh, have positive retention, long-term retention, without having the need for reinforcement when they are themselves engaged. And as you rightly mentioned, there is enhanced transfer to clinical practice when there is virtually the three-dimensional approach, the spatial memory. It helps like transferring the anatomical knowledge and its application in the clinical tasks. So that is one point. And it actually helps in long-term retention. The activity-based learning we conducted in 2022, I happened to meet one of the students recently. We had osteology of skull learning through that activity. Until now, the osteology part, which I'm completely confident of, is the osteology of skull learning because it was activity-based. So that is the effect of the spatial memory, I think. Thank you.
Thank you for all your perspectives. Dr. Doris, would you like to give your perspective?
Yeah, your question was on how spatial memory is important in our or is rote learning. One, I remember, I don't remember who the author was, but one paper was on Sheila ma'am was mentioning about exam-oriented learning. That may be one concern that we can maybe address, because sometimes our examinations are actually focused on unintentionally encouraging rote learning. So that may be one of the reasons, because in one study that I remember was dividing the anatomy assessment sessions into spatial ones and non-spatial ones. If you consider, like, if you ask a student what are the 4 peculiarities of clavicle, that's not a spatial. That's not that's kind of you can learn that only with a kind of rote learning. But if you are asking which are the vessels posterior to clavicle, or which are the nerves important posterior to clavicle, then that needs spatial understanding. You can't rote learn those things. So if you kind of divide our assessments, and if we focus our assessments, maybe make a clear goal for our assessments, and avoid points where there are a lot of non-spatial tasks into spatial understanding, that makes it more clinically relevant. Actually, a student actually needs to know what are the posterior relations of clavicle, rather than understanding all the mentioning all the 10 peculiar features of clavicle. That may be important for an anatomist, or may be important for a scholar, but for a basic clinical practitioner, is that important? Maybe that is one way how you can think about the goal of an examination or assessment. One of the reasons for this is probably our assessment systems need to be reoriented. So that may be a further step for that, when spatial understanding becomes more relevant. Actually, thank you.
I endorse your view, Dr. Doris. In fact, later on, I'll ask Dr. Praveen Nair, because he's the convener of the Regional Center of NMC. I would like to ask him for medical education technologies. So I'll put the question to him. But you're so right about, changing our examination system. Competency-based medical education, in fact, gives us an opportunity to change the way we teach and examine them. If we have better designed, crafted OSPI stations, we could have spatial memory, assessments much better. Movements of joints, rather than having clavicle, scapulohumeral rhythm. I think, if you ask the students to perform abduction of the shoulder joint, teach them in the classroom and then assess them on it. Like I always do that. Though I told you I don't use shoulder, gestures, but I do make them perform these movements, like shoulder joint. I ask them to, medially rotate and then take it up beyond 90 degrees. And when they can't do it, I ask them to do it lateral rotation and then take it overhead abduction. And I make them, remember which are the muscles which are helping them to move 15 degrees to 90 degrees and beyond. So when they perform, like Dr. Anjana said, there is dual coding. There's double stimulation of kinesthesia, engagement, immersive learning, everything, and also auditory stimulation, where the
Yes.
teacher you mentioned about 12 tips to effective learning. There are 12 tips to teaching a skill, also in medical teacher. So if we taught the right way and assess them the right way, I think that would take us a long way. A point on Dr. Praveen sir's, about the dissection, the students don't have access beyond the college hours to use technology. Now, any kind of technology, even the virtual dissectors, they have mobile apps. So they could perform the same dissection that they do in a dissection hall in their hostels as well. Let's move on to further questions. Um, we'll move on to next question. I would like to pose a question to Dr. Doris. Can kinesthetic methods be realistically integrated? I noticed Dr. Abraham mentioned we have students with 200 and 250 students. He had directed a question to Dr. Sheila Shivan, in fact, regarding technology, but it goes for kinesthetic teaching as well. So can it be integrated into a crowded MBBS curriculum? And also, as large group teaching, we have students where the minimum student strength is 150. So we have 250 students in a classroom. So can these kinesthetic methods be used for large group teaching? I did notice you said small group teaching is where you use gestures, but can it be used for large group teaching?
Yeah, gesturing is actually I think maybe because I am a more expressive person, I use gestures totally even when I talk. So I've been using gestures probably in all my lectures, and in my lectures practically I use gestures, and I feel students also tell from a practical point of view, they also give good feedback, informal feedback to me. But when I actually tested, when I did the experiment, I did it on 49 students. I don't know whether it comes under definition of a small group or large group. But anyway, gesture is actually it's occurring in a personal space. I can only gesture in my personal space. I can't do it beyond that. So the practical ability of a student to view that and to understand the spatial cues of my movements or my gaze is, it's always limited. So it's always a challenge to when you do it to a large group. That's right. Kinesthetic movements to a large group is challenging. But I think that is a point where I remember NMC actually had focused on increasing small group sessions. But I'm not sure whether all medical colleges are still are focusing on that. Because I just moved into UK this year from Trivandrum, so still we have a lot of lectures in most of the medical colleges is what I feel. But when I come to UK, here anatomy is 90% at a small group. We teach a lecture in small. Actually, the rooms are designed for small group involvement. They have a lot of group discussions. We give them activities. The rooms are designed. That is something. There are so many practical limitations for doing this. But in the university in the medical school where I am teaching right now, the rooms are redesigned. So here also we have 240 students actually. BMBS is the course here, equivalent to MBBS. But it is divided into 60 groups, 60 each, and each of these 60 is arranged in a group with 5 or 6 around a table. And we have multiple screens or a lot of facilities which provides it. So we can, in my sessions here, I give them kinesthetic activities, which they can do in that small group settings. We need a little bit of a redesigning, a kind of vision to design teaching spaces to make students involved in kinesthetic activities. Here in my medical school, there is a lot of focus on giving. Actually, we have a lot of resources as well. We have a lot of virtual resources where the university has subscribed. We have multiple screens. In one teaching room, we have 10 screens that is mirrored from our lectern screen. So that kind of facilities also makes it more advantageous to create kinesthetic experiences for students. So it needs a lot of, there are limitations, there are hurdles for that, but that is a way forward. If we have an idea of redesigning our medical colleges to have small group enabled teaching spaces, that may enable in future giving kinesthetic experiences to small group teaching, but may not be that evident in a large group lecture. That's what I feel. Yeah, thank you. Another
Absolutely, sir.
one more point, if I add, I've actually here we have VR and AR headsets too. So I'm planning to, since I'm working on a little bit on how gestures is used to communicate, that may be a solution where I can project what I see on the VR screen onto multiple screens. That can be a possibility, but I have to explore that. Because I believe in doing an experiment and proving it than basing it on anecdotal evidence. Yeah, thank you.
I agree with you, sir. In fact, in 2019, I was very happy unhappy with the gallery type lecture halls where small group teaching had to be done even in the foundation course. The directive by NMC was do small group activities, but essential is gallery type, so that's a paradox. So in fact, I took the examination hall and converted into a lecture hall throughout the foundation course, since it was for a short duration, for 2 weeks, and then we continued longitudinally for 6 months. So the examination hall, which has a flat surface, was used so that the students could be involved in activities. But when the core subjects were taught, we had to move back into gallery type lecture halls. But now India also, we have smart boards where lecture capturing system exists, and there are numerous TV monitors within the lecture hall. But then they would still be observing the teacher through a TV screen. Like it captures the teacher when he's actually teaching with gestures or any kinesthetic activity, but the student watches him through the TV screen. Okay, thank you, Dr. Doris. I would like to now move on my question to Dr. Anjana. Um, you spoke about game-based learning. So I would like to know if there is any evidence base for game-based learning in anatomy. Is it merely a novelty or does it lead to sustained benefit?
Ma'am, as far as the literature goes, the reviews that we have so far, they're all pointing towards the effects. It's like novelty effect because they are all studied for a very short-term benefit. We need further systematic reviews to confirm long-term benefits beyond 3 to 6 months. And we were just working on this, and we tried to brainstorm amongst our faculties as to how exactly we will be able to reap sustained benefits with this game-based learning. That is always that it should be a complementary mode of teaching only, along with the conventional small group dissection and the lectures. But this requires a complete roadmap for successful implementation and reaping sustained benefits. As I was telling earlier, the first phase, it contains needs assessment. You have to identify the gaps where this game-based learning can be implemented in your setup. And we have to frame specific learning objectives and also what are the outcomes we are expecting out of it. And the resource allocation, ma'am. By resources, I mean not just faculties and the resources as the infrastructure. We have to allocate specific time slot. So I was in charge for, even when I was an associate professor in the year 2022, I was in charge for a period of 8 months in the department where we made sure how best we can reap the benefits. We made sure that we incorporate 1 hour or 2 hours stipulated dedicated time for activity-based learning. And we implemented it on every Fridays, ma'am. So that will be a formative assessment of the week's learning. So resource allocation in terms of time as well is required. And incorporate this learning into the routine curriculum so that the students get benefited on a regular basis for us to reap the benefits. And you have to sit and design and actively plan the method. You have to select the games, you have to develop the games, and plan a method for assessment and evaluation also. You test the games in your small group teaching. That is how it grew, ma'am. I did it in my own table first. It was a success, and I was correlating with the outcomes in terms of IA marks or when they completed the course, getting into the PhD degree. At that time, when I was an assistant professor, these were the landmarks I had in mind. So you plan a method, you pilot test it in a very small group, and you start refining your methods, and then you can go for full-blown implementation. The final outcome analysis is also equally important. Otherwise, it isn't going to be able to reap continuous benefits.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to, adding on what you have just mentioned, there's a comment by Dr. Allen who says, are there any protocol that are using to translate embodied learning into actual lesson plans that are aligned with current anatomical curriculum? You just mentioned that they need to be aligned with the curriculum and incorporate into everyday teaching, right? So probably if there is a curricula mapping and curricula alignment with game-based learning, and it is
That would be
reinforced. It's not that you just have to teach
one
it
time.
once and yeah, it has to
Yes,
be
ma'am.
reinforced over a period of time.
Period of time.
And yeah, so I think then it would be successful. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Yeah,
ma'am.
thank you, ma'am. I would like to now move on to Dr. Sheila, ma'am, for her thoughts on the feasibility of immersive approaches in diverse educational contexts. Ma'am, I think there was a question earlier also about the feasibility in low resource settings. Our country is diverse. We have private institutions as well as government institutions. So how feasible is the adoption of immersive technologies like VR or AR in low resource Indian settings? Because all institutions may not afford it or may not choose to invest in these highly priced equipment. So what are your thoughts on it, ma'am?
Yes, I agree, ma'am, because if investment is the initial investment is actually huge because when we consider the new technology based, the virtual reality. But when we see that the initial expense, when we look into that, if it is feasible, the institution can go. Or another method is that we can collaborate. We can collaborate with other institutions or government agencies or the, because here this collaboration is collaborative learning is one of the advantages of this VR and AR, which can happen that you sit here and you can collaborate even with other country also if you want. We can have a collaborative method of learning. That is one thing which we can do. And actually the immersive technique we can use that many publishers, they are giving us softwares where we can use the softwares by which we can ask there are a student version of the softwares also like what Praveen Iyer sir was telling, the virtual table is there, dissecting table is there, which can be used for that as a alternative for the virtual immersive learning, virtual reality. And there are even mobile apps are there where augmented learning types, so we can use certain mobile apps. And there is a low cost virtual reality device like some Google Cardboard, which offers scalable entry at an entry level option is there. And major thing is that along with other that is the web-based open resources, we can correlate and we can make our according to our local requirement also. When I searched, what I found is that I think several institutions, they are successfully piloting this VR-based training programs, especially I think Sri Ramachandra Institute of Higher Education, they have with Medisim VR, they are established virtual reality training center of excellence. Then I think Osmania Medical College, along with they have integrated this VR with developed with the Institute of Technology, Hyderabad, and I think AIMS, New Delhi also has done some pilot projects on this VR in neurosurgery and orthopedics they have implemented. So gradually we can, so the advantage is that when we look on to that, the initial cost might be high. But when we look at a larger perspective, when the number of students are high, more years, then that becomes not a, I mean, it doesn't become a high investment. when we compare to the cadaver lab, because every year it is a recurring expense for the institution where we have to obtain the cadaver for when the number of students goes high, and now NMC mandated, as per NMC mandate, it is 10 one cadaver per 10 students. So in that this one, when we look at a higher perspective and broader perspective, actually this might be much more feasible, that is going for a virtual reality investment. And there are some apps which are compatible with Google Cardboard, which that is anatomy learning 3D apps are there. And I found something like a body VR, that is a journey through inside a cell. You go through a cell, there is and there are VR virtual reality labs are there. But what I have found is that the leading virtual reality platform is the 3D Organon. That is a leading VR app, which is, I mean, the VR leading platform, which I have said, 3D Organon. And when I looked into that, when I looked for a quote, so we have to, I mean, the cost of that. So they are asking you request for a quote, they are asking for that. So I didn't request actually. So actually I'm not aware about how costly it would be. That is a 3D Organon is the platform which I found, which is for the virtual reality. So these are the statistic, I mean, the methods by which, but I know, of course, like what you mentioned, ma'am, in India, the infrastructure is very important. That it is not the same. Even there might be areas where high-speed internets are not there. So that is which is very much mandated for this virtual reality centers. So it might take a few more years for us to advance to that level.
It may
Thank you.
take a few years, but you have given us hope, ma'am, with
Yeah.
your ideas about collaboration and your emphasis on innovation within the constraints. They are truly inspiring, ma'am. Yeah, you did mention about online apps that are available. They cost less. In fact,
Because,
between 500 to 600
yeah.
rupees, as compared to investment, which the management has to do. Here, individuals can, and we can also have BYOD, bring your own device method, where we ask the students to get their own device because they are into Gen Z, as Dr. Anjana mentioned. They would be having all these apps. So to conclude this segment, I now invite Dr. Praveen B. Iyer, sir, to share his thoughts to our final question. To quote that oft repeated cliche in medical education, assessment drives learning. And all teaching learning methods that we employ would have little effect unless the outcomes were to be assessed. Since Praveen Iyer, sir, is an authority in medical education technology, I would like to direct this question at him. How can we design assessment tools that capture embodied learning outcomes, sir?
Yeah, thank you for this question, ma'am. If we look at our curricular alignment, primarily we're looking at aligning assessment methods and assessment strategies to the learning objectives that are set and taught to the students. So in that context, if you're looking at what kind of learning you're wanting the students to actually achieve using spatial memory and embodied learning, the assessment methods will have to be designed in such a way that they have to be aligned to those outcomes that are achieved. So in that context, again, I'll make the same statement. Anatomy is predominantly a knowledge-oriented subject, which deals with the lowest level of knowledge to the highest level of knowledge of clinical application. So in that context, spatial memory and embodied learning concentrate on higher cognitive levels. So if that is the scenario, then our methods have to be such that they should assess the higher level of cognitive domain. The higher level of cognitive domain, with that, I mean that identification and demonstration of things pertaining to anatomy in the assessment will form the basis. So let us look at one example. I can see also comments in the chat. Objective structured practical examination. Now, in various fora, there have been discussions on how OSPI, a term that is used to assess skills, procedural skills primarily, in a learner, how best it can be used in the subject of anatomy. So if we look at the spatial memory and embodied learning, I think OSPI becomes a good method of use for this particular thing. So identifying a particular structure, relations of a particular structure in a specimen or a model, that can be a good way of a station in the setup of OSPI. Secondly, we also have seen people attempting things like body painting workshops, etc. So by doing that, what we are trying to do is not only make the students learn. When the students learn and they paint on their own body or somebody else's paints the part on others' body, they're actually being assessed how correctly they have actually identified the location of a particular, say, muscle, vessel, or a nerve on the surface of the body. So that is surface anatomy and body painting. Then the third thing is analyzing the use of gestures themselves, which are used for teaching. So can they actually replicate and demonstrate the structures using the gestures? So observation of those gestures can be another way of assessment. The other tool could be asking the students to construct clay models. So if they construct clay models, what it actually does is we can assess their understanding of a particular structure, how the curvatures are, how the surfaces, contours are there. So that is clay modeling, which can be also used as an assessment. Now the question comes whether these kind of assessments can be used for summative assessment or formative assessment. That the answer to that, of course, is it is for formative assessments primarily, because summative assessment is in the hands of the university, and we only can recommend whether it is possible to be done at a university level. Otherwise, all these things that we are doing is to enhance the learning of application of anatomy so that they can better use it on the clinical side. So formative assessment is the way where we can always try these things within our own setup. There was one question in the chat about how can we use reflection and portfolios, reflection in assessment of spatial memory and embodied learning. I think the answer is yes. The experiences that they have of learning, like we take feedback from the students, the reflection writing and narratives itself will be an assessment of their learning and how they learned, what are their feelings about the learning experiences of embodied learning, can definitely be done through reflective exercises. However, whatever method we choose, the bottom line is alignment of the assessment method to the objectives that are taught and achieved using the learning experiences. So there has to be a balanced approach of multiple assessment methods. And for assessing, if we have to actually give marks to the assessment, because without marks, people don't learn. So therefore, we need to create certain scoring and rubrics how we are going to assess, because this will be more of a subjective nature. So therefore, we may have to create that. And the most important thing is we should ask questions and we should ask things in assessment which will be highly clinically relevant. And I think these are the ways we can develop strategies to develop assessment methods for embodied learning.
Thank you so much, sir. You have mentioned how you need to capture their performance if they are taught, if they have learned by doing. And a few points on the assessment that you mentioned, sir. Regarding drawing earlier, histology diagrams, gross anatomy diagrams that we were discussing. In fact, Dr. Hemangini Shah has also asked about histology, how we can teach by embodied learning. This KUHS, Kerala University, I don't know now it exists or not, Dr. Sheila ma'am and Doris George sir. There was a question in theory, they needed to draw the diagrams, histology or gross anatomy diagrams for some amount. So theory paper, they had to draw a separate section. Also, we have this in 2023 regulations of CBME. We have the simulated virtual lab, as one of the formative assessment, tools. And in fact, and to answer Dr. Jasmine as well, in our logbooks, we had reflective writing of each of these subsections, including simulated virtual lab. though we don't have a simulator as such, we have mannequins, and what we did is per rectal examination, intramuscular injections in the mannequin is what we taught them, and that they had to write their reflections, and we have rubrics which have been recommended by NMC that uh, what is that? The logbook we write as per expectation, below expectation, and above expectation. So those were the rubrics which were used, and finally we had to convert them into marks. So this was done for formative assessment, as Dr. Praveen Nair has suggested. Regarding spotters, sir, you mentioned they need to identify the structures. So I was just wondering whether we can have auspice stations where you don't tie the ulnar nerve, but you ask the student to identify ulnar nerve in the arm. You keep a specimen and ask them to identify. But you have an observer. So it's an observer station, and the students have to identify with the structures around them. I think that would be more of assessing embodied learning. You know, one station you have such. It's not that you have several stations. Just my suggestion alone. So this is what I had to say. So I would like to thank all the panelists for all your suggestions, and now we'll keep the floor open for questions by the audience. You can either post on the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask questions to any specific panelists if you wish to. Dr. Vijay Karthikeyan, you also please check the chat box. I think Dr. Praveen Nair has checked. I think all the questions have been answered, but I'll read them once again. Dr. Jasmine asks if the app which is mobile friendly, I think it's directed to Dr. Sheila Shivan or Dr. Ranjana, I think. Ranjana,
Yes.
Dr. Ranjana. If the app
Yes, ma'am.
is
Yes, ma'am.
mobile
It is
friendly,
mobile friendly. It is actually
Yeah.
mobile.
You don't have to use it only on the laptop.
Only on
Okay.
laptops.
Okay. Next is Dr. Abdul, who has asked, is augmented reality the same as virtual anatomy seen by virtual dissection tables? I guess it's for Dr. Sheila Shivan, but any of you can take the question.
No, augmented reality is something, it's an overlay technique which I showed you, that is with an app, with on a real thing, you are making it as a 3D image and seeing. Virtual reality is something which you use a headset or and you have the software in front of you. By the haptic technology, you can modulate with your hand. The other one you are imposing, that is what I showed in that I think video. The what the digital image is being overlaid on a real that is either it is a diagram, a picture, or a person, or a skeleton, or some whatever it is. That is the difference between VR and AR.
I hope it answers your question, Dr. Abdul. Dr. Praveen Nair wants to say.
Just wanted to add on what Sheila ma'am has said. The virtual dissection table uses the principle of virtual reality only. So what is there is software, and what is there is a haptics only. We are touching, we are breaking, we are cutting the virtual cadaver. We are deeply immersed while doing all this. So basically, it is an example of virtual reality. Only the difference is there is no headset which is there. Instead of that, we are doing it on a screen which is available. So that is the only difference. But then, as you all know, in the virtual dissection table, there are facilities where you can actually incorporate data of patients also. And that is how it becomes an example of, say, people using the dissection table to plan surgical approaches also. So using the real patient data incorporated into. So that's another difference which is there.
There's one more innovation that the made in India virtual tables have included, other than radiological pictures, CT images, which have been incorporated into virtual tables. They have also created auspice stations, using virtual dissection table. So if we teach on dissection table, we need to use it for examination purpose as well. So they have created auspice stations in it. Next, we move on to Dr. Abraham's question. I think it's been answered, but anyway, how feasible is, I think, virtual reality when you are speaking of, ma'am? How feasible is it for a class of 200 or 250 students? Dr. Abraham, did you mean virtual and augmented reality?
Yes, ma'am. I meant addressing our large gatherings of our classrooms, like in India.
Yeah, so any of you can take the question.
I think large gathering as such, it might be difficult, but as we take them to the simulation lab in small groups, it will be feasible only even. And if it is a mobile app version, they can use it on their own with their own mobile if it is there. So that will be okay with, even if it is a large group, we can direct them. But more accurate is for a small group. That is what I feel.
Ma'am, what I meant is like, is it having a single unit which can be substituted for multiple persons? Like, for example, we can gather in a Zoom meeting. If, for example, I attend a church service which is not in Indian language, so they connect in Zoom, and I can go with my own Bluetooth so that I have my Bluetooth on, and I just join the meeting. So, is there any possibility for more accounts to be added in that particular unit using that unit? Any facilities like that multiple users can be used? Because I see that you have used that software or app.
I think you have given an idea to the vendors. They upgrade very quickly, these days. So
Yeah.
they are all in competition in the field.
It depends
You have
on
given,
the software, I think.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So they'll upgrade, Dr. Abraham, thanks to your innovative ideas. Dr. Shantini has asked, do we need a virtual lab or can we read on a laptop or mobile lab? Dr. Praveen Nair has already answered the question. Dr. Jasmine has asked about reflection metacognition. It has been answered as well. We have taken Dr. Allen's question. Dr. Lata Prabhu has asked, 3D animations are available on YouTube for embryology. Can hyperlink, it's not a question, it's a comment. We can hyperlink these YouTubes for PPT presentation. Dr. Jasmine has directed a question to Dr. Doris, which he has answered. Dr. Abraham has appreciated the 3D learning free app that you mentioned, ma'am, Sheila ma'am. Dr. Vasudha asks, how about Kahoot as app for game-based learning? Dr. Anjana, would you like to take the question?
Yes, ma'am. Most institutions now, they are implementing Kahoot as an app for game-based learning. It has been in work for many years already. Quizzes, crosswords, depending on the type of game you choose, you can create the questions, and it can even be time-based. It can very well be used as an app for game-based learning.
I think
Thank you,
Mentimeter
ma'am.
also there is.
Ma'am, if you permit, I can
Mentimeter.
add on that, ma'am. Is that
Yes,
okay,
sir,
ma'am?
please go on. Yes, sir, please go on, sir. Dr.
Yes,
Kribakaran.
sir. Yeah, since this question was asked, like I'm involving in a lot of gamification sessions. Just want to add, all the gamification apps are not made for medical education teaching. We are correlating that, and we are trying to use it for our learning purpose and teaching purpose. So Kahoot and many other gamification apps are majority-wise used for assessment, not for teaching. So in medical education, we are using it in large proportion for the assessment, like formative assessment. But one or two apps or tools like Educa Play, which helps us to teach like mapping and video-based. As someone said, we can add that hyperlinks in the Educa Play app, and when the videos it's getting projected and it runs, we can pop up with questions wherever we wanted to make it like that. So in some LMSs also it's possible, but Mentimeter and Cohort and many other like online interactive tools and gamification apps are predominantly on assessment, but not directly to teach the cognitive part or theory part or something like that. So that is one of the like gaps we have to explore and upgrade. As you told, like we have to wait for in future we may find some other good apps like which is helpful to teach it now. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your input, sir. I just want to give a comment because there's a talk on Kahoot and other Mentimeter and so on. I'm a great fan of Slido.com. And I must say that technology fails the most inappropriate time. So today I actually wanted to use
What can you sit there,
Slido.com
Slido?
for the pre-panel poll.
First question.
But it failed just before, we went we went live, it failed. And then, so what I feel is we educators are our own backup plan. So whatever technology is there, we should always depend on ourselves. Okay, that's it. I think we have come to end of all the questions. If anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask, fine. Dr. Devi Shankar says, great discussion. Dr. Rajeshri Chanda says, complete anatomy can be used for teaching. Dr. Ashish says, very informative and full of immense knowledge session today. Feels honored to hear from talented, hardworking dignitaries. Really role models for us, especially, okay, myself, Sheila ma'am. I worked with both ma'ams in CBME group also. Thank you, Dr. Ashish. We are very glad to have you on board.
Thank you, Dr. Ashish.
So there are a lot of compliments to all the panelists. Do any of you want to add anything? Or should we wind up? So I would like to thank all our panelists and participants for the stimulating discussion. Today's session has reminded us that anatomy is not only seen and studied, but also felt, moved, and experienced. So our key takeaways for today's session are very clear. Spatial memory strengthens conceptual retention. Kinesthetic and game-based approaches make learning active and joyful to the students. And immersive techniques deepen engagement. And cognitive neuroscience provides the evidence base that ties all of them together. I hope these ties are liberating, and these are not the ties that bind us and gag us. So, as educators, our challenge now is how we integrate these insights from our erudite panelists into our everyday teaching so that our learners don't just remember anatomy, but they embody it. Thank you all once again, and over to our MC for the vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. So now I would like to invite Professor Dr. Rajeshri Chanda, who is the Professor and Head, Department of Anatomy, as well as the Dean Academics and MU Coordinator of Jagannath Gupta Institute of Medical Sciences, West Bengal, to propose the vote of thanks. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, ma'am, you're.
So good evening, everybody. It is my proud privilege to deliver the vote of thanks for this enriching panel discussion on spatial memory and embodied learning. Today's session reminded us how deeply movement, interaction through either game-based learning or immersive technologies can shape the way we learn and remember anatomy. The insights shared by the panelists have truly opened up new possibilities for making our classrooms more engaging and memorable. My heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished panelists, Dr. Doris George, Dr. TSR Anjana, Dr. Sheila Shivan, and Dr. Praveen Iyer for their inspiring perspective on kinesthetic, game-based, immersive, and cognitive approaches in anatomy education. A special appreciation for our moderator, Dr. Deepti Sastry, for wonderfully leading the discussion with such clarity and warmth, and Dr. Vijay Karthikeyan, our Master of Ceremony, for his smooth coordination throughout. A sincere thanks to Dr. Sangeeta M. for her warm welcome and for setting the perfect tone for the evening. We also extend our sincere gratitude to the leadership of IAME for their continued guidance and support. Special thanks to the office bearers, Dr. Pragnesh Parmar, the President, Dr. Ghulam Mohammad Bhatt, Vice President, Dr. Kiru Bakaram S., General Secretary, Dr. Vijay Karthikeyan, Treasurer. Our appreciation goes to the team for creating this vibrant platform that fosters collaboration and exchange of innovative ideas in medical education. Finally, a big thank you to all the participants. Your enthusiasm and thoughtful engagement through the comments in the chat box have made the session truly meaningful. Thank you all for being the part of this collaborative learning experience. Let's continue to innovate, inspire, and reimagine the way we teach and learn anatomy. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, ma'am. From my side, I would like to extend my gratitude to all the panelists, Dr. Rajeshri Chandar and Dr. Sangeeta, who agreed to give the vote of thanks and the welcome address respectively. And most importantly, I would like to thank Dr. Kripakaran and Dr. Vijay Karthikeyan and all the office bearers of IAME who have provided us with a platform to discuss. Where would we find anatomists from Mumbai, Kerala, from Kolkata, from Karnataka, and from Tamil Nadu, all on the same stage, and all of us discussing something that we share the experiences that each one of us has had, and all the challenges that we face, and so that our lives as anatomists and the way we teach anatomy to our students becomes more effective and productive. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Vijay Karthikeyan.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. I would
Thank
like
you.
to extend a thanks to all the panelists, to the moderator, and also Sangeeta ma'am, as well as Rajeshri ma'am. We will be closing on behalf of IAME, and we will be meeting you soon in one important topic for discussion, that is on FAP, whether it is sustainable and what will be the roles of faculty, students, and community stakeholders. That will be our next event in November 10th. So we will meet you all soon in that event. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.